My name is Andriy Zagorodnyuk, and I'm a chairman of Center for Defense Strategies, Kiev, Ukraine.
What's taking place in Belgorod and in Kursk right now? The Ukrainian forces have been there for more than a week, at least in Kursk, and they seem to be planning to be there for a while. What's happening there?
Um, as you know, for over 2.5 years, Russia is waging a full-scale war against Ukraine. This war is unprovoked, illegal, and Russia, during these 2.5 years, committed enormous amount of crimes against humanity, war crimes, and so on. So for us, for Ukraine, it's extremely important somehow to make Russia stop, because basically for us this war is very damaging in all respects, and for Ukraine this is existential risk. And we believe that Putin is trying to destroy Ukraine as a country, and we believe he's fixated on that. We believe that he is paying pretty much all resources and all possible price, to do that. Because the number of the casualties from the Russian side is already well exceeded 500,000 people, and they still not planning to stop at all, and they still planning to do some additional mobilization. In Russia, as you know, the economy is fully transformed into the war economy, which would be incredible for, let's say, a democratic country, because it's just like, imagine like half of the spends right now of the Russian state budget is somehow related to the war. In any normal country, you would not see that, because people would say, "Wait a second, we have other things to spend the money." But Russia is not a democratic country, so Putin can do whatever he likes. So we need to find out a symmetric solution to this problem. We need to find the way how to stop him, so that he actually stops the war and withdraws from our territory. And one of the things which been discussed for a while is how to make the war more painful for Russia, how to make it more visible for Russia, and how to convince, even indirectly, Russian leadership that they actually cannot be successful, because they are constantly existing in a sort of in a mode where they convince themselves that they actually can win and they can be successful, and actually war goes according to the plan. So one of the ways to do that was to start attack Russia itself, and in order to divert their forces, in order to show them that their capabilities are not that strong as they are supposed to be. But more importantly, of course, is to create the area of instability inside Russia, that they stop thinking about Ukraine and start to think about their own safety, and understand that if, unless they withdraw some of the troops and move troops out, and which means that jeopardize their plans on further progressing in Ukraine, they would be in a very stupid situation when they conquer part of Ukraine, but at the same time losing part of Russia.
Uh,
And of course, yeah, and that's what we see right now, is attempt to realize that plan.
you're former Minister of Defense in Ukraine, so you've seen this broad view of how a military should operate and what's necessary to make it successful. So when you look at how this, and it's no longer an incursion, they've been there for more than a week. So when you look at this situation, would you call this an occupation, or what do you call this? And how do you assess the way in which Ukraine did this? Because no one knew anything about it. No one's talking about it from the government except the president and maybe a couple of other people. How do you view the way this was done?
This was done in a form of the raid. So there is a term which is called a raid, and that's the military term, at least in Ukrainian doctrine and many other countries' doctrine, and that includes, of course, a temporary stay. So that doesn't assume that the country stays, like the troops staying there forever. However, the raid does not include certain things which we see right now. Part of them is like digging trenches, because indeed Ukraine is kind of settling in this area. At the same, so it's not like a pure raid. At the same time, we clearly there's no plan for Ukraine. I don't think there is. Let's put it this way. And we don't have that in our strategic culture and generally in the culture, any ambitions about keeping part of the Russia territory forever. So I don't think that we have any plans regarding like annexing this, like Russia did with with part of Ukraine. And so the idea is that most likely is either this is going to be a prolonged raid or somehow which would be just have a goal of distracting Russian forces and destroying their plans in the east of Ukraine. So basically, where they are currently trying to attack us in the east of Ukraine, or it could be holding territory for longer until the war ends with some political settlement, and then that becomes part of the political settlement.
All right. So this is the first time something like this has happened inside Russia since World War II. I mean, it's a big embarrassment, or at least it seems like it's a big embarrassment for Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin.
Right.
What do you suppose their best, how will they try to retaliate? Because as you mentioned, they've got a war going on in Ukraine and you're forcing them to make a choice. They have promised to
Um,
retaliate. So how will they do that, do you think?
so first of all, the word retaliation it can be used very carefully when describing the ongoing war. Because if there was no war and we suddenly decided to attack Russians, yeah, then we could say, wait a second, like that's shocking, and what how they're going to retaliate, or there is like a frozen conflict, or there is like a low intensity conflict. I have to say that they are attacking us on a daily basis. Every single night or every couple days, we have air alarm, and they're sending some either drones or rockets or something like that. And that happens with a with a quite horrifying regularity. So many people in Ukraine already sort of got used to understanding that they can see rockets flying over their homes, and that happens like all the time. Unfortunately, many people see rockets flying into their homes, and then there are casualties, then there are some destructions and so on, and that happens pretty much every second day. So and then the minor cases like a drone flies into a car or drone flies into a small house somewhere in the village. It happens literally every single day, and the world got used to that. So the world is not reacting on that anymore like was a shock, because it's just like all the time for 2.5 years. So so this is so we need to do something regardless of what Russians are going to do, because we need to do something to stop all that madness. So that's the first thing. Second thing I need to say is that Russia is so fixated on winning this war, and they were so upset with the fact that they cannot win it otherwise, because whatever they're doing in the East is a very little part of their overall ambition, because their ambition was way more than a couple villages in the East. And I don't know, we probably need to remind the audience that this is not a territorial war. This is not a war for Donbass. This is not the war for east of Ukraine. This is existential war. So goal of Putin, strategic goal of Putin, is to destroy Ukraine as a concept. Basically, that Ukraine doesn't exist. At least it doesn't exist as a self-sovereign nation choosing their own future, etc. So Putin is so focused on that that it seems like, at least from what we see over the last 2.5 years, he's trying whatever he can to do that. So essentially, he exhausted all the options of possible actions, and he tried to do mass bombing. He did mass bombing. He tried to do like genocidal kind of a carpet bombing, like in Mariupol when he destroyed the city with probably tens of thousands of people inside the city and and encircled the city before that, and didn't let the people out. And you can see in Netflix there is a 20 Days in Mariupol film which was showing this horror which happened in Mariupol when the people were there and they just couldn't leave. And they were bombing it like every half an hour. There were bombings of the city until it was destroyed completely. So we're wondering that he most likely already used pretty much all options available. Whatever he's not using, everybody is immediately thinking about things like full mobilization or obviously nuclear weapons and stuff like that. Whatever he's not using this because something holds him other than dire consequences of those actions. So he would be happy to use nuclear weapons, tactical, not like maybe
Yeah,
strategic,
yeah,
because strategic he was built for other war, hypothetically in the Cold War. But tactical, they were built for this kind of a relatively close range, and he probably could already have used it unless he would see some dire consequences. So we believe that he exhausted most of his escalation potential already. And that's why whatever we are doing, he would be reacting anyway. He would be doing bad things to Ukraine, plainly speaking, regardless of our actions, because he wants to get rid of us.
yeah.
And all we need to do is to defend ourselves, and that's what we're doing right now.
Okay, can you and you're exactly right about using the word retaliation, because if Russia hadn't started this, then we wouldn't be talking about this. So yeah,
Exactly.
you're exactly
Yes.
right. And I've actually heard that from some of your compatriots in Ukraine. So apologies for using that word.
Oh,
And
no,
I
no, no
because I do
problem.
know,
We have
do
this
know,
discussion pretty much all the time, so no worries.
yeah,
It's like
yeah, but
it's
I
a
do know
very tricky thing, terminology and all that.
but I do understand the importance of words when talking about this war. So
Right.
you're moving on to the weapons. Ukraine is in a much better place, it seems, now than it was several months ago. Do you think the new weapons and the new capabilities they've gotten from the West, the US and others, is has put them in the place that they're able to do this and take care of things in Ukraine as well as what's going on in Russia? Or is this something they would have been able to do without that?
No, I have to say, and I believe most of your audience is from United States, perhaps, and all you need to know that without US help, Ukraine wouldn't exist now. So it was just plain and simple as that. Europe cannot produce that many weapons. Some of the weapons are absolutely exclusive for U.S. manufacturers, such as some of the barrels, some of the artillery guns, some of the rockets, including Patriot rockets, and so on. So without that, we would probably not. We would still exist, but the life here would be tremendously more difficult, and most likely a great part of Ukraine would be already under occupation, much bigger than it is right now. So without Western help, Ukraine probably would survive in a totally different shape by now. So that's regardless of what we do in Kursk. It's just an overall fact.
What do you think is Ukraine's next step here in terms of um, one, prosecuting this defense against Russia's unprovoked, rather Russia's illegal war? So, what's Ukraine's next step here? You said that it's most likely going to be a temporary situation inside of Russia, but it still has to maintain the momentum that it seems to be getting from these developments right now. What's the next step we are most likely to see from Ukraine as it continues to try to end this war?
Since Russia is not planning to stop, at least at the moment, the steps would be the multiple, and of course they would involve also some diplomatic actions, because we are hearing constantly recently about the peace summits which Ukraine is initiating. So there will be another one in autumn, where this time the international community, which holds these peace summits, because the last one was in Switzerland and was actually organized formally by Swiss. I'm not sure where the next one will be, but somewhere in an international platform, and I believe they're going to invite Russians. I don't know if the Russians going to show up, but at least they would be invited in order to at least start some kind of a something. Frankly speaking, personally, I'm not speaking on behalf of government at all. Personally, I feel completely pessimistic about the ability of Russia to actually negotiate in a good faith, because I think that that sort of fixation of Putin on this war is beyond rational now, and because rational person would not start that, and by starting that, even if he has some weird rationale of his own, When he would see so many setbacks back in 2022, 2023, he would go for real negotiations already by now. But he didn't. So he still pursues goals by murdering like hundreds of thousands his own people, and still achieving very incremental, very small success, heading his economy to disaster, to eventual disaster. So it's very strange motivation, and that gets us to and committing a enormous amount of war crimes which they even don't hide. Unlike before, when from 2014 and 2022 they were attacking Ukraine, and they had this limited war. They were trying to say that they're not there. Right now, they're not even hiding their activities, including the war crimes and so on. So, which means that he's not hoping to return to life as normal. And as such, very skeptical. And many other analysts are very skeptical about the possibility of a proper negotiations with that guy. So, as such, we need to come up with a military solution, more and more, and just we need to show Russia that they cannot win. And only after that, when they realize that they cannot win, they will start to think about the sort of off ramps from this situation. Because right now they are in a sort of illusion that they actually can win. And in order to do that, they need to start losing heavily. And so the next steps for Ukraine would be about that. And of course, the next steps must be something asymmetric, something unusual, something creative, like this one with Russia. So that's why it's very difficult to say what exactly is going to happen, because the whole idea is that symmetrical war with Russia is not going to be successful, because as soon as you have symmetrical war, then the resources matter, and Russia will have more resources than us, despite of the Western support. The Western support is still very, very limited. Russia is committing much more money than the West to this war, and way more. Uncomparable. And Russia is focusing, and it's focusing all its economy on the war, and obviously West doesn't. So we have some limited arrival of weapons. So the resources available to Ukraine are still smaller than the resources available to Russia. Plus, they don't count people; they consider that as expendable, and we don't. And that's why symmetrical war is not going to be to our favor. So we need to do something out of the box, and that's, I hope, what we'll see soon again.
All right, Andriy, could you give me any final thoughts you might have? Is there something that you think is important that I haven't asked you about that you think is important as we discuss this situation?
I must say that there's a lot of questions around the Western countries, Western people right now about that. This war needs to end up somehow sooner than later, and it doesn't matter who is winning it, and it doesn't matter, anything. Even if Ukraine has to cede the territories, let's just finish it as soon as possible. Let's just stop it, and that's it. And that's extremely naive and very much detached from reality thoughts, unfortunately. We would love the war to stop tomorrow. Nobody's enjoying it, like, say, at least in Ukraine. But the problem is that stopping it by Ukraine conceding something significant in order so Putin actually feels empowered and feels like satisfied, unfortunately, is not going to stop it. It may give him a period of time to gather more troops, to recover, to create reserves, create critical mass of weapons, and then strike again. That's traditionally what he does. So we need to be we need to remember the history. We need to remember how sometimes he makes pauses in order to get more power, and then he strikes again. So the only way to stop Putin, and that's unfortunate because it means that it's going to be more difficult for us, is to make him lose. Can Russia lose? Yes, Russia lost many wars before. Even in the times when they were having apparently more resources than the adversary, they still could lose, because resources is not everything. You need to have effective capabilities, and Russia has problems with that. But we need the kind of strategic patience of our allies who support us. That they don't want to just haphazardly patch it up, close this, and then say, okay, it's done, because it's not going to be done that way, unfortunately.
Andriy Zagorodnyuk, former defense minister for Ukraine and distinguished fellow now with the Atlantic Council. And the head of a very important defense organization inside Ukraine right now. Andriy, thank you for your time and for your
Thank you.
insight.
Pleasure. Thank you.